What are the Brahmaviharas and how do they help us gain release from suffering?
Hi, it's Margaret Meloni and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm a Buddhist practitioner out here in the world, having experienced the loss of my loved ones and knowing how much my Buddhist practice helped me on my grief journey. And now, together, we have this safe space to discuss death, dying, grief, and the Buddhist teachings that help us really understand attachment, impermanence, being compassionate, being death ready, what it means to live a life so that we can have a peaceful death. Yep, it's a big topic and we're going to take it on together. Let's go.
Then, with his heart filled with compassion, he dwells, suffusing the first quarter, 1/4, the second, the third, the fourth. Thus he dwells, suffusing the whole world, upwards, downwards, across, everywhere, always with a heart filled with compassion, abundant, unbounded, without hate or ill will, just as if a mighty trumpeter were, with little difficulty, to make proclamation to the 4 quarters. So by this meditation, Vasati, by this liberation of the heart through compassion, he leaves nothing untouched, nothing unaffected in the sensuous sphere. This, Vasati, is the way to union with the Brahma. And that's from the Digha Nikaya, 13.78, the threefold knowledge, also referred to as the way to Brahma. This is one of the many times that the Brahmavihara, or 4 sublime states, are mentioned in the Pali Canon. The above passage specifically names compassion or karuna. But before this passage, metta, or loving kindness, is listed. And then the following passages discuss sympathetic joy, or mudita, and then equanimity, or upekkha. All of the parts of the Brahmavihara meditation contribute to the successful end result. The end result being a mind that's purified, like a Brahma. And that's why, part of why it's the Brahmaviharas, right? And then Vihara is dwelling, like a dwelling place. Each passage is identical, with the exception of naming the specific Brahmavihara or sublime state. The Brahmavihara are significant, but they're not the goal or the primary message of the Buddha or the primary message in the Pali Canon. The primary teaching can be expressed by this passage from Anguttara Nikayas 245.3. And how is liberation its core? Here the teachings have been taught by me to my disciples for the utterly complete destruction of suffering. Through liberation, one experiences those teaching in just the way that I have taught them to my disciples, for the utterly complete destruction of suffering. It is in this way that liberation is its core. So what we know is that the Buddha, out of compassion, taught to help us get release from suffering, destruction of suffering. And when we completely have that liberation from suffering, then we have the ability to reach Nibbana. And the Brahmavihara, those purified states, when worked together and when one achieves that mind, a pure mind like a Brahma, one is in a better place to move forward on the path to ultimately achieve that destruction of suffering. So that's part of the context and how it fits it together. So Vasetta has approached the Buddha to find out how to learn the true straight path to union with the Brahma. And in his reply, the Buddha puts forth the Brahmavihara as the true path. This association, which surfaces in multiple suttas throughout the Pali Canon, leads to that name of Brahmavihara, or dwelling in or with the Brahma. Taken at face value, this could simply be a case where the Buddha is teaching a Brahmin how to achieve his ultimate spiritual goal. But we have to stop and think why, because the Buddha wasn't teaching Brahmanism. He was teaching final liberation, whether it agreed with the current set of beliefs or not. So if so, why is this included in the canon, right? So if he's really just teaching a Brahmin how to reach a goal that the Brahmin feels is the ultimate goal, which I don't think is the case, but if that were the case, why would he include this in his teachings and repeat it over and over again, as it is repeated over and over again? So it's not about teaching a Brahmin how to achieve a spiritual goal per Brahmanism. The purpose of the teachings, again, of the canon is to teach liberation, and union with the Brahma is not liberation. So within the context of the purpose of the teachings, the Brahmavihara are indeed part of the path to liberation. The Buddha is not intentionally teaching union with the Brahma. He's teaching the steps to final liberation. And the Brahmavihara meditations or contemplations are not necessarily by themselves going to lead to the destruction of suffering, but they are meant to lead to a pure mind. So the reference to dwelling with the Brahma can be construed as a reference to being of or in a good mind state, immaculate like a Brahma. And what the Buddha is teaching is using words and phrases that would be understood by his audience, which at that moment was a Brahmin. So in this state, prepared to move on towards ultimate liberation. The Brahmavihara bhavana, which are contemplations or meditations, are part of a larger meditative process designed to lead to liberation. They help one to traverse the jhanas being those states, those deep meditative states that we may go through. I don't know if we're going to go through. I don't know if I'm going to go through them all on our path to liberation. So the position is part of the path, and this position is reinforced in Samyutta Nikaya 46.54, accompanied by loving kindness. This sutta is included in the section of the teachings referred to as the connected discourses. Here, each element of the Brahmavihara is attributed with a different accomplishment. Each results in a liberation of the mind. None of these are the ultimate liberation. They are, if you will, smaller mini liberations that are important, for the creating of the pure mind state that is necessary for the ultimate liberation. Loving kindness and equanimity are present in all wholesome mind states. So anyone who has a wholesome mind already has the ability to project loving kindness and equanimity. Compassion and sympathetic joy are only present when the mind is in the appropriate mode, which makes sense, right? Because you feel compassion when you are commiserating with those who are suffering, and you feel sympathetic joy when you are rejoicing in the good fortune of others. Still, they all work together, so none of them is meant to be practiced uniquely, completely by itself. Metta guards against compassion becoming partiality. It prevents it from being discriminating. Metta gives equanimity its selflessness. So when we have that loving kindness towards all, that means we're not just projecting compassion onto the people we care about most. And it allows equanimity to be selfless, that we can be in that state. Compassion prevents love and sympathetic joy from forgetting that there is suffering, right? So compassion is there to remind us when we're feeling that like love for all and happiness for others, good fortune. It's a reminder that there is suffering, not in a bringing us down, but remember in a balance, bringing us towards equanimity. So compassion is preventing complacency and also guards equanimity from becoming cold and indifferent. So equanimity isn't lack of feeling. It's not apathy. It's not coldness. It's not indifference. It is, I'll say, balanced feeling, stabilized feelings. Sympathetic joy keeps compassion from being overwhelmed by the suffering, because it's a reminder that there are good things happening to people, just as there are difficult things happening to people. But equanimity is the king, if I can say it that way, the culmination of the other three. Equanimity is the culmination of metta, karuna, and mudita, right? Of loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. So equanimity or upekkha, the culmination of the other three, because it provides a stabilizing factor. Without equanimity, they may fall away. Compassion without equanimity could go towards an uncontrolled, despair. It gives compassion, so equanimity gives compassion more evenness, some courage, and some fearlessness to face the misery over and over again. So outside of Buddhism, we do hear about compassion fatigue, right? We hear about people who work with the sick and the dying, or with war-torn areas, with people in great poverty and seeing great injustice, and it's easy for them potentially to get compassion fatigue. Well, equanimity helps to keep that balance to prevent that compassion fatigue. To successfully abide in karuna or compassion is to prepare the mind for mudita or sympathetic joy. If sympathetic joy is achieved, then upekkha or equanimity is possible. So you see, these four are, working together, supporting one another, each in a way making the other possible or tempering the results of the other. When we've got the successful obtainment of upekkha, or equanimity, then we've got that mind that is pure like a Brahma. But again, remember that just really means having that pure mind state. If this mind state can be maintained, then the mind is prepared to take the next step toward final liberation. Compassion is a necessary step in the process, which leads to abandoning the 5 hindrances, and then the ability to enter and dwell in the jhanas, but not just compassion by itself, compassion and loving kindness and sympathetic joy, and ultimately upekkha. The Brahmavihara are among 40 meditation objects. When I say meditation object, it means, especially in Theravada Buddhism, that if you went to your teacher and you discussed your progress, your situation, your mind state, you would be almost maybe say like prescribed or assigned a meditation object or two or more. And then the purpose of these objects are to help us gain the proper purification of the mind that we need. So in terms of the Brahmavihara as meditation objects, they're to be used within the second of the 7 paths to attain that purification of the mind. And each of the 7 paths, so if there's 7 paths to get the purification of the mind, and each represents a stage, the 7th stage is the highest, and the highest is Nibbana, or the final liberation. So this is, we can say in a way, we'll call Brahmaviharas like step 2 out of 7. They're important for sure. They're definitely one of the steps to liberation, as we've been discussing. And I guess you can say it's like an earlier step or perhaps a foundation which is necessary in order to traverse the successive steps in the path to ultimate purification. That's a little bit on the Brahmaviharas and how do they help bring us to the release from suffering? By preparing our minds. And when we can look with an unlimited amount of loving kindness at others around us, when we can have unlimited compassion and unlimited sympathetic joy, imagine what our minds would be. And then when we can combine that with equanimity, imagine the clarity and the ability and the availability of our minds to be ready to move on towards the path to final liberation. The Brahmaviharas are helping you, but you know what else? When you are extending loving kindness to others, all beings, when you are extending compassion to all beings and having sympathetic joy for all beings, you are also helping them with their release from suffering. So it works for you and it works for the sentient beings around you who are benefiting from your ability to send them unlimited amounts of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, with that overall balance of equanimity.
I've got books for you, starting with Carpooling with Death, How Living with Death Will Make You Stronger, Wiser, and Fearless, the book that got me going and helped me to discuss going through the death of my loved ones, followed by Sitting with Death, Buddhist insights to help you face your fears and live a peaceful life, based on Season 1 of the Death Dhamma podcast. And just recently, Enlightenment Unleashed, how your pet can lead you to spiritual transformation, because during our lifetime, we may see the rising and ceasing of many pets, and we love them like they are our family. Find these on Amazon.com or come see me at MargaretMeloni.com. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Meloni. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on MargaretMeloni.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, May you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.